And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. After another little technical glitch and our friend Leonardo, which was unaudible, now we have him, we hear him, we see him, and we can kick off panel number 5 of the Luxembourg Internet Days 2020 in that crisis framework we were talking to you about earlier, or I was talking to you about earlier. I hope that you have seen the main crisis text is on the main page of the Luxembourg Internet Days, and if you're registered, you got what we had imagined and thought about in terms of impact of this crisis for the NIS environment. So with me today is a very international panel. It's the beauty of Europe that we have people from all possible ends of Europe with us. We have my co-host, let me start with the ladies, my co-host Rayna STAMBOLIYSKA, which is connected via audio means and video means from Paris. We have Sheila Becker from ILR, which is from Luxembourg, and whom we invited for in her double role, one today being Mrs. NIS and cybersecurity at the level of the ILR, but she formerly was Mrs. Cybersecurity at the level of the Luxembourg Army, which is also an element which hopefully we will get to slightly addressing this morning. Then we have Marianthi Theocharidou from ENISA. You may smile, Marianthi. I tried and tested to pronounce your name the entire evening and the entire night, so I hope I did it right. We have Jean de Chillou from CSSF. You have heard his colleague Cécile Gelenoncourt earlier with an interesting presentation as to where Luxembourg stands and what Luxembourg is doing in terms of NIS for the financial sector. So Jean is from the Financial Sector Supervisory Authority in Luxembourg. And we have Leonardo de Vizio from the European Commission. And we just had Svetlana Schuster, his colleague, giving us a few insights into how things move on with the review of the NIS directive. Now, we have heard what NIS is. I think we should not further extend on that. Maybe I can kick off and then I will hand over to you, Rayna, because I know this is much more your domain than it is mine. And as I'm a physical infrastructure guy, I would have a tendency to too much draw this discussion into the CIP, regulation, review, etc., which we may address, because Svetlana also said that we need to keep in mind that there is a connection between the two and that a global approach to cybersecurity is going to be a cyber-physical approach. Let me ask the following. Do you have, and this goes to Leonardo, but to all of you, obviously, do we have an insight into what the NIS directive produced on the ground in terms of raising cybersecurity awareness, raising cybersecurity defense levels in the European Union? Do we have something like that?
Hi, thanks for the question and indeed for inviting me today. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we hear you perfectly well.
Good. Yes, indeed, we found the main sources of information for this is definitely what also Svetlana mentioned, the country visits that we carried out into all 28 member states. Unfortunately, COVID didn't allow us to carry out physical visits because there was the outbreak of the pandemic in the middle of it. But what was most interesting, it was speaking not only to national authorities, but also to private sector stakeholders. So may they be operators of essential services or that were concerned by the directive and that were required to implement security measures in the area of cybersecurity. We think that the NIS directive was most effective as an awareness-raising tool, especially in those areas that were less mature. So while you may think, I don't know, for the financial sector or for the aviation sector, that I mean, these are quite so cybersecurity investment was already there, and the awareness of, for example, CEOs and decision makers inside the companies was already there. For other type of sectors which are, let's say, equally, if not more, in society, such as drinking water management or healthcare and hospitals, this I can say was probably together with GDPR, especially when it comes to health, a game changer, because it helped a lot of organizations to think about cybersecurity from the beginning and to try to reshape their processes, the security of their network and information systems. So from this point of view, I would say they're quite satisfied with the level of awareness that the NIS directive has raised. At the same time, of course, we think that implementation is key. So the directive has been adopted 4 years ago, but I think that there's still a lot to do in terms of implementation and enforcement, trying to accompany especially the least mature organizations towards a path of compliance and, of course, trying to shift their cybersecurity mindset. Nevertheless, we think that regulation in this case has been a useful tool to enhance the overall level of cybersecurity in key sectors. So I think we served, it served this purpose, and this is also one of the things that we have in mind when looking at the revision of the NIS directive. And this is why I think the revision should try to be, should try to build on this basis, which we think are solid.
Okay, Marianthi from ENISA, can you confirm that? Do you have further insights to those which Leonardo mentioned?
We have the same impression. For example, I have the pleasure of collaborating mainly with the railway sector, which is a sector which is quite particular because there is maturity on the IT part of railways, but on the operational side and the safety side, the cybersecurity awareness is not there yet. And it's a sector that is becoming highly digitized in the next years. So the NIS directive had been a trigger in these organizations to apply cybersecurity in some parts of the organization which they did not touch before, to raise awareness within the organization as well. So I can report such positive messages from that sector as well. And another thing that at ENISA we were concerned, we were trying to quantify the effect of the directive, and it's not an easy thing to do. So at the moment, we are conducting a study on investments on cybersecurity, and it has a part on whether the investments were related to the compliance to the NIS directive. Unfortunately, it's ongoing now. We're expecting it until the end of the year, so I can't report findings. But it should give us a much clearer picture on maybe some quantifiable data to confirm the impression we share with the Commission.
Okay. Now, from the helicopter view, European Union addressed by Leonardo and by Marianthi, let me get to Luxembourg and to the ILR. The ILR being a regulatory authority which has a number of horizontal competences, not only in telecoms, but in energy, etc. How about you, Sheila? How did you perceive the implementation and the feedback which you are getting? Do you think the awareness level has raised substantially since NIS, or has it always been very high? And then the same will go to Jean, obviously, for the financial sector.
I think overall I can say that I have the same impression that there is a raising in awareness. I can, as you said, I can only take a look on the national part, but so from what I've seen is actually that due to the approach we are taking in Luxembourg as well, so we can also have all the sectors, or the people in the sectors who are working in the different security parts on the table and getting to know each other and getting to know what they are doing and working together in a collaborative approach in order to get a higher level security altogether and not all by everyone alone. So that's one of the part. And I think when it comes to the different levels of security, I think it depends, or the maturity what was already beforehand. I think it all much depends also on the different sectors. So you might have sectors who were already mature and others who were not that much mature yet, but we are on the way to getting everyone on a higher level, let's say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jean?
Yes, on my side, I think the NIS directive has created something that is very good. Is the collaboration between several entities, and also the collaboration between authorities across country, also each inside the country. So we have a relationship with the ILR, for example, and also a group of national competent authority within the EU to discuss all together about some specific topics on the NIS directive. So I think this is a key element that the NIS directive has been able to implement properly. Is really the communication between actors that are involved in cybersecurity in the financial sector specifically, and also cross sector. So I think that's really a good thing to have. And for the awareness of the sector, I think that this directive is fostering the security practice in the financial sector. So a lot of people are speaking about the NIS directive and the measure they need to implement, and it's a good thing actually that people are actually speaking about it and implementing measures to raise the bar.
Okay. Rayna, you see a lot of sectors, you see a lot of people, you see a lot of companies now as in your consultancy or in the consultancy part of your life, because you have a lot of other parts to your life, as we know. But in the consultancy part of your life, what is your impression? And then I will hand the floor over to you for the next questions and discussions with the panel.
Well, I will be, somehow the divergent voice here, in the sense that everyone, I interact with or have interacted with in the past few years on this topic is happy with having rules, and with having a tool to compel higher security maturity. But that somehow ends there. In the sense that there is a huge disparity in the seriousness with which that sort of rules are apprehended. For example, you have a lot of people who say, yeah, we have a great budget, we have a 5-year plan for starting off the compliance with the NIS directive. And you're like, okay, and what have you done concretely? Are you connected in a very concrete, tangible, operational way with, I don't know, in other certs? Do you know who your counterparts from your specific sector across the EU are? Well, no, because since not every member state has the same interpretation of the directive, some actually exercise a very huge level of secrecy on which are, for example, the operators of essential services, which, when you are in your helicopter and trying to have those people from the same sector working together, they're like, yeah, well, I don't know whether, this counterpart is part of the organisms that are supposed to, respect those rules or not. So there is a lot of confusion. Sorry to rain on your parade. There is also a lot of discrepancies amongst big European actors, which have a specific, entities in different member states. So sometimes the entity in France will get a request from the entity of, I don't know, Poland, asking them to provide, compliance certificates with the NIS directive. And they're like, it doesn't apply to us because the rules in France are not the same as the rules in Poland. So, sorry, So those are the things, that we have also seen brought to the table, thankfully, by not only stakeholders but also shareholders, which is important, to distinguish during the past months in the different discussions, in the different interactions, workshops, and so on that we've had. at the European level, there are very good ideas coming to fruition that I hope to see, appreciated at their real value in the final text that will come up sometime next year. There was even, I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but there was even a very strong request from many actors to adopt a different legislative tool, meaning not, replace directive by regulation, which would actually, encourage, let me put it that way, countries, member states to basically abide by those rules in a much more coherent way. So I'll leave the floor here to our...
It's true what you say. I think GDPR is a good example of the fact that a regulation which nobody thought would ever be able to kind of create a level playing field between 27 member states, nonetheless did it, maintaining that sufficient level of flexibility in there to kind of calm all those who would start yelling about state sovereignty, blah, blah, blah. So yes, we have precedents. Well, on the other side, I have to say in defense of Leonardo and Marianthi, that to a certain extent, if you're approaching a new terrain such as cybersecurity, which the NIS directive is the first instrument really addressing that on a European level, and we had privacy regulations before GDPR, but still, probably the directive was the most consensual way of going for it and of moving forward. Now, if you take an extremist view, you obviously can say, can we afford consensus in cybersecurity? The answer probably is no, but that's it. But I will pass the hand on to you for further questions to the panel, except if anyone else from the panel wants to react on what Rayna or I have been saying.
But I just wanted to thank Rayna basically for setting out the reasons why we should, why we think we need to review the NIS directive, because indeed there is a lot of room, let's say, of maneuver for member states, for example, in setting up rules and identities. So I think this was, I mean, you did basically most of our job in this case. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, it's a common challenge. So your job is also my job and vice versa, in the sense that it's something we need to build together, right? So, happy to contribute, even if, it is somehow or sometimes through very unconventional ways, such as saying, look, in the real life of real people, things happen slightly differently. So here is how, we could look at this. I have a question, because that's also come in the different discussions we had, and Marianthi mentioned the financial part of things. So we have, of course, a political consensus to look for and to look after, because the NIS directive, when it was put to fruition, was the result of a very intense and interesting political discussions. So today, when we look at 2 years after, sort of, and we look at the financial side of things, what we see is that capabilities are not, equal across member states. So I was wondering whether there are ideas or even commitments, policy commitments, at least, to put, to put basically national authorities at equal footing when it comes to capabilities, providing, the least wealthy, so to speak, with some more funds, or I don't know. Are there any specific, commitments that you are seeing coming up from your work, either at ENISA or with the Commission, in terms of capabilities?
Well, the funding part I will leave to Leonardo, because at ENISA we do not handle budget for for improving capabilities. But what we do is we support the activities of the Commission, in the sense that, for example, one of the main things that all member states have had to do was to have a strategy, a national strategy on cybersecurity. At ENISA, we worked to help them either update their existing one or create one if they didn't have it. And we continue to support them now how to assess it, how to monitor it. So this is like a first step for a member state to have a strategy. And that includes also not only the policies and the measures, but also funding, for example, or where research nationally should focus on. So it encompasses all the spectrum. And then we also work on the capabilities, not at the member state level, but at the sector level or at the private sector level. We support, for example, the information sharing and analysis centers that exist in specific sectors. I mentioned examples: finance, energy, railway. This is a way where the security officers of organizations can gather in a not very formal setting, but speak with the counterparts. You mentioned this as a big gap, and get to know each other, and then exchange lessons learned from incidents, vulnerabilities, worries, how to get support from management, how to get funding. This is another way we support the capacity building, at least at the sector level or at the practitioners level, because this is equally important. So that's what I can share. From funding, I will leave the tough questions about money to Leonardo.
Okay, so should I just indeed briefly on funding? Let's say that indeed, we think it's very positive, the fact that the NIS directive has led, for example, all member states to have a CSERT, so Computer Security Incident Response Team, and we think that with the requirements in NIS, additional resources have been allocated. Of course, we also see, let's say, imbalances between member states, and so we would like to help those indeed that are less mature to advance. So in terms of funding, we've been supporting, of course, with CEF projects, with the Connecting Europe Facility instrument, member states to develop capabilities and to develop tools, let's say, and instruments to improve the level of maturity of their national CSERT or their national authority. And at the same time, I think that, so I would like to highlight the fact that the Commission proposed the new DEP, Digital Europe program. This is a new program that basically is aimed at funding technological and industrial capabilities for Europe. So of course it's wider than the capabilities, but still I would like to highlight the fact that the funding proposed by the Commission was at the time 2 billion. It will probably be lower what is agreed by co-legislators, but still there will be a substantial increase in the level of funding that is allocated from the EU level. We talk about possibly a 5-fold increase. And this means that there is a different level of awareness concerning how much we need to develop cybersecurity capabilities, not only among member states, but also when it comes to abilities and to try to further develop our cybersecurity industry. I also want to touch upon indeed the cooperation part. We think that indeed only posing requirements of member states to increase their capability is not enough, but it's very useful to them cooperating either at technical level within the CSER network, or rather at more strategic level within the helping them to share best practices and indeed to let's say find good examples for how to their level of and we would also we also support through this year's CEF call possible staff exchanges between member states. We think this is also a very concrete thing. Of course, COVID didn't help us a lot with that, but we think that this is the right path and something that we can replicate in the future.
Let me toss that question over to the Luxembourg, between inverted commas, part of the panel, and to Sheila and Jean. Do you have feedback or information on the cost of implementation of the current directive within the sectors which you are in? I mean, Sheila, for you it's broader because you're overlooking this for multiple sectors, but Jean, for the financial sector, do you have feedback? Can one say implementing NIS represents a cost of XYZ per company, per corporate entity concerned? Now, I know it's a question of scale, of size of the company, etc., but do we have some kind of feeling on that side?
I know that for some companies, they increased their budget. I don't know numbers, but I know that they are taking it seriously. Maybe it is also interesting to go on another point when it comes about funding from basically the NATO side, and then comes in my previous job. And I know that, of course, the member states are not the same as allies, but there is this famous cyber defense pledge where all the allies signed and agreed to take cybersecurity at a priority and to fund into capabilities. So that's also interesting to know when talking about funding for capabilities and increasing security at national level.
So it's a cooperative approach and not a top-down regulatory approach, which you are mentioning with NATO.
Yeah, but it's from a member state's point of view. So it's a member state who has the obligation, let's say, or promised to invest into cyber security. But it's you can say it's also an obligation because they actually have to provide information and detailed information regularly to the NATO. So it's not necessarily only like a promise.
Yes. Jean, to you, on the financial sector, do you have any kind of feedback on the cost of implementation on the financial side, obviously, but cost of implementation goes way beyond mere financing. Cost of implementation goes into changing routines, changing attitudes, etc., etc., etc. So it's cost in the broader sense of the word.
Yes, actually, we don't have exact figures on that, but our strategy, as Cécile mentioned in the earlier speech, was not to create more administrative burden for the institutions. The financial sector is already highly regulated, and they already have some elements that are part of this directive. For example, if we take only one example, that's the reporting of cyber incidents. The institutions in Luxembourg are already since 2011. They need actually to send a report to CSSF in case of cyber incidents since 2011. So it's not something new. You got also the reporting as part of the SSM for a significant institution that is already in place. And there is also the reporting of incidents regarding the payment services under the PSD2, for example. So actually, the NIS directive, as part of cyber incident is concerned, is not creating something new. It's just adding another point of view of that. So I don't expect that for this particular part, for example, there will be an increase of cost or effort, let's say, for financial institutions. They just need to send a report to another email address, and we are trying our best actually to not create administrative burden on top of what is already requested for the financial sector.
Mm-hmm. Rayna.
Yeah, I have another question, which is quite, operational this time, so to speak. Incidents, we know it will come at us. We don't know when, but we know it will happen, right? The question is, there are ways of preventing at least most of the incidents, which is vulnerability management. So I was recently reading a Gartner report saying that vulnerability management is now in cybersecurity professionals in C-level top 3 main concerns. Is there something, anything in the new, in the revised version of the directive that actually, takes hold of this specific particular challenge? Do not hesitate, to pick the question whether you are aware of something like this or whether you would like to see something like this happening.
Question to the entire panel, huh? I mean, not only to Leonardo and Marianthi.
Exactly.
If I may, I would like to interfere. So actually, I think that's a very, very important point. Because the current NIS directive is focusing on, let's say, a one-way communication channel so that the national competent authority gets information from the operators, but there is not a flow from the national competent authority to the operators foreseen in the NIS directive. And I think that could be a way in the future to enhance the vulnerability management at a national level in order to focus on information sharing, vulnerability disclosure, and stuff like that. So I think that's a really, really important point for the future.
John?
Thank you.
Yeah, for as far as the financial sector is concerned, the vulnerability management is officially mentioned since the last circular we issued, the 2750. Actually, that is transposing the EBA guidelines. So there is a whole section actually on security, information security, and it covers also vulnerability management. But still, before that, we got in Luxembourg the circular 12552 that we're mentioning, that patch should be done in time by institutions. So that was already something that was mentioned, not vulnerability management as such, but at least that the systems should be patched. But still, I agree with the point of view of Rayna, mentioning that vulnerability management is absolutely key. Actually, most of the breaches so far are happening when on vulnerability that are not patched for more than a year. So actually, most of the vulnerability that are exploited are due to CVEs that were issued more than a year ago. So it's absolutely key that institutions keep updating their systems and they are fully up to date when they are exposed online. That's something that is a low-hanging fruit actually for the cyber criminals. They can very easily interfere with that and breach.
Leonardo, Marianthi, any reaction on that?
May I?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, I will agree with what Sheila and Jean said. There are two points. One is that I will mention that we also, because we talk a lot with operators of essential services, they want the two-way communication. They report incidents, but they think they do not get sufficient feedback on incidents. They also mentioned that they would also be interested in learning on near misses, incidents where the security measures actually worked, but they were, if something was, if a vulnerability has not been patched or a measure hadn't been activated, then there are lessons to be learned there, because one organization may be mature and actually manage the incident well, but another less mature in the same sector could learn from their practices. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that we say patch management, but when we go to specific sectors where especially the operational systems have a very long lifespan, it's not up only to the operator to patch a system. For example, I know the railway sector well. A train has a lifespan of 30 years. If the manufacturer doesn't support patching or doesn't do updates, or if they run the risk to lose the safety certification with a patch, that's a challenge. The operator cannot manage this challenge on its own. So involving the industry and the manufacturing part is also very important for vulnerability management. That's my point.
Leonardo.
Yes. I think that all the points that were touched upon are very valid in the sense, and I would like to say that the ambition for the NIS2 can be indeed to build on what we have now, which is the incident reporting requirement, but at the same time to try to create an information sharing ecosystem as much as possible. So this, I would say that includes abilities and includes also and I think also that such ecosystem should be in a way coherent across sectors. So, for example, if we take the DORA proposed regulation, that operators may benefit from a sort of one-stop shop, and that it would be up to authorities among different sectors. So, for example, from the to share information with the cybersecurity one. And when it comes specifically to vulnerability disclosure, I think it's indeed this is key. For example, to reduce the time that it takes to spot an incident. I read, I don't remember somewhere, that the average time is 6 months now, and this is something that of course we cannot afford. And I think it's important to have the right rules and policy tools that can help both us and member states to let's say allow for this. I would say this can be focuses indeed of the future steps.
Let me make a remark with regard to that before we get to a last round of questions or comments. That remark is the following. Let's not forget also when we discuss NIS that we have the CIP directive, which also is subject to review, and let's not forget that vulnerability management does not, or detection and vulnerability investigations, which every corporate entity or every provider of essential services should do, does not end at the fence line. Everybody who is into the financial sector, energy, etc., relies on physical infrastructures, and every once in a while asking your provider of the physical infrastructure underlying your services what he is doing in terms of incident management, vulnerability management, etc., does not hurt. That was just a comment for me. Now, I would like to know, as a last really final roundup and fast round, so to speak, from every one of you, including you, Rayna, is if you could draw up a wish list, 5 words, what would you like to see in NIS 2021? Directive or regulation? Let's not start that legal debate. So I start with Sheila. 5 words. What would you like to see in NIS 2021? Improved or whatever?
Information sharing, collaboration, exercises and training. That's about 4 words, but I think that's enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean?
Harmonization, that's a key element. Information sharing as well, that should remain and should be enhanced. Then maybe basic rules or cyber hygienes, something with more concrete elements to put in place that are compulsory and non-negotiable.
Okay.
Not 5 words, but still.
Marianthi. I know you're not going to spit into Leonardo's pot, but still you can.
No, I can say my personal wish list. So, harmonization, and more engagement, active engagement and exchange with the private sector, because they are the ones that actually implement the measures. Something on supply chain management and cybersecurity. This is another issue. We have SMEs as well, which are not in scope of the directive. I'll stop there. I'll leave it to Leonardo to conclude.
Leonardo.
Yes. I would say that, basically 5 words would be a higher level of cybersecurity in Europe, would be 6. And I think that all the things that indeed the other panelists talked about are extremely relevant. I hope it's enough.
Rayna, dear, you get the last word and the closing statement. What would be your 5 wish list items? And then I let you close the panel.
So happy to see that my own suggestion turned against me for this take-home message. increased public-private cooperation is one. Mandatory certification for the supply chain is another one. You know, as a way to tackle the supply chain uncertainties, and also as a way to put even greater value to the work ENISA is doing on certification. So that's much more than 5 words, but you know. And of course, vulnerability management and patching as you know, something very strict that needs to be respected by stakeholders and shareholders across the union. And so as for conclusion, the conclusion is, well, thank you everyone for this. We have so much work to do. And I would encourage also my you know, colleagues who have very strong technical expertise to join in the policy debates, because we do need to feed, you know, policymakers, people with a very high-level strategic view of the union. We need to feed them with technical expertise so that the rules that are that we all need to abide by are really relevant for everyone. And of course, to our more institutional colleagues, well, do not hesitate to reach out. We are eager to share our knowledge, our expertise, our very bad puns. I'm sorry for that, you know, with you. So yeah, welcome, and let's work together for a safer European cyberspace.
Perfect. Thank you also to all of you on the panel, Sheila, Jean, Leonardo, Marianthi, and obviously to the most irresistible Rayna. Thank you very much for having been with us on the Luxembourg Internet Days 2020. And hopefully we will see one another without masks or anything more disguising us than helping communication on the 2021 edition of the Luxembourg Internet Days. Thank you very much to all of you. We have a very, very short break right now, and then we go on with the LUNOC conference, which I would like to invite you to attend. If interested, very interesting presentations, business cases from the Luxembourg network operator community, and all this being managed and moderated by Cynthia Wagner. I will see you back around 2 p.m. with the first presentation of the afternoon, which is going to be a presentation highly interesting and mind-opening about artificial intelligence in the European airspace by Paul Bosman, who is the Mr. AI of Eurocontrol. Have a nice one. See you back soon. Thank you.